Thank you all very much for coming here. The first slide here is basically laying out the title of my talk, which is Aspects of the History of Kenure House Estate from 1654 to 1980s, but actually a bit beyond that. I use the word aspects regularly because I'm not standing here as somebody who knows all about Kenure. I know some things about Kenure, what I researched, and there's lots of other aspects. That's why I use that word, aspects. I have a connection to Rush. I married a Rush girl in 1975, and she lived in the Haystown estate, not too far away from where the house was. My uncle Paddy Andrews, he married Pauline Donnelly in 1967 in Rush. We both, and I was at the wedding, but in 1967 I didn't think I was going to be back there again in 1975. So it's just amazing the way things move around, you know, in these local areas. Basically what we're looking at on this slide here is the locally published material, which is important to have a look at if you're interested in researching Kenure. It's the big books that are out there, the coffee table books, can look after themselves, but all of these works here, including two of my own, which I did at Maynooth as an undergrad in Maynooth University, the locally produced work have something a little extra because the people are from the area. So we're starting with the Down Survey map, 1654, circa 1654, and it shows it within the square there. It shows Rush Park. It was known as Rush Park and the estate, and you can see there it's not too far away from the town of Rush. It was built on a ridge which was called a Golden Ridge. The other names for the area was the headland of the yew trees and a few others that you see there. So that's the Down Survey map. Now we have, I'll just have to revert to my pages because I can't see it well enough there. So we have the Civil Survey then, same date, which shows that Kenure was known as Kinure, K-I-N-U-R-E, had 300 acres and a mansion of stone, and was possessed by Robert and Mary Walsh. And as Roman Catholics, they were soon to lose their land, so as a consequence of the 1641 rebellion. This is just another one. This is the Earl of Ormond, and he owned basically the town of Rush, which consisted of the town and lots of land, some of which was sandy, of poor quality, you could say. This is an important document here because it's a deed between James Butler, Duke of Ormond, and Sir Henry Echlin, Baron of the Exchequer, of the town and lands, 367 acres of Kenure, which was dated the 13th of May 1713. So there's a transfer of land there. That was formerly Walsh land, is now in the Echlin family. If you go to Lusk, for those who don't already know, if you go to Lusk, you will see that tomb. Now my father-in-law and mother-in-law are buried in Lusk because actually just over there, the next grave from the tomb there's an informative plaque on the tomb which was put there by the Lusk Heritage Group. I'm not going to read it out, but all the information is there. We can come back to any of these slides at the end if anybody wants to ask me a particular question about it. Otherwise, I have a lot of material to get through, so I just want to go through them quickly. But you can call me back to them, no problem. Now, There's a map that shows Kenure itself. Within the circle is the original stone house, and then within the square, I'll just draw your attention to strips of land which go back to the Anglo-Norman period, when strips of land were given over to tenants, and they had to move every now and again. It was a good way of keeping land, stopping somebody from over exerting the land, because they had to pass it on. So you can see there at the bottom of that map, the thin strip there is the southern entrance going in. You can see that it looks pretty mean there, because it's just basically a road, albeit it's on the same level all the way across. But anyway, we've two maps here. Now, the first map is the same map, it's just showing that thin road coming down, and it shows what the town of Rush, Main Street, Upper Main Street was like back in the period above there, 1834 to 1842. And then in the second one we have a huge change. First of all, the road going in has been massively, well, it's been wider, and you've got trees, you've got mature trees all the way along, and then you've got a setback in the road. Anybody who knows that entrance, you now have an area in front of the main gates and the lodge, which would have been just, the lodge would have been in there. So it's a much bigger improvement. Now, the downside of that improvement, if you were some of the people who were living there at the time, is that your landlord told you had to move, and there was no way of saying, no, I'm not moving, because this is what the landlord wanted, and what they wanted they got. Now, the landlord at this later stage is the Palmer, Roger Palmer. Now, this is now the original house was burnt down, and then it was sort of repaired. And then in 1842, you have this major improvement of the house. The original house that was there, the stone mansion that we mentioned earlier, has been massively improved. It would take an hour just to go into all the differences in this particular house, but in any case, that's the house we know of before it was knocked down. So that's the house we know of in the photographs when we're looking at it. Designed by George Papworth, who was a very well-known architect at the time. Now, an interesting part of the house, I'll go on to the next. Here's a plan of the house, and some of the rooms are massive, and there's 20 bedrooms, there's all sorts of servants' quarters and all sorts of quarters. Now, these rooms had to be supplied with water, so I used to hear people saying that St. Catherine's Well, water was drawn from St. Catherine's Well, physically drawn in barrels. But according to the builder, which is the publication that gives us this and the one previous, the one of the house, the builder tells us that there was a ram, a hydraulic ram, which brought water under pressure from 3/4 of a mile away and saved the house. Now, I was trying to think, where are they drawing it from? Sometimes you see they have big houses have a lake which is slightly higher, and they draw the water from there. But there's no such. Kenure is on the high ground, so that's a question I cannot answer today anyway. But they did have pressured water going to the bathrooms, which they had. This is 1842. The bathrooms and the water closets, which is where the WC were and all that, they had water, and plenty of it. So St. Catherine's Well wouldn't have been sufficient on its own, because the river that feeds it is only a small river. Now, well, we mentioned earlier that so Roger Palmer, Bart, he was the 5th baronet. His father, when he died, which we'll come to shortly, when he died, the baronetcy died with him. But in this slide here, he's in full control of his estates, where he had massive estates in Mayo, huge estate, 115,000 acres apparently, in different blocks. But Kenure was an important part too, because Kenure is where they lived. They had houses in Mayo, but they chose to live in Kenure for the summer, and then in the winter time they went over to Wales, where they had another residence. I'll try and just stick to what I have in front of me here. I'm trying to get sidetracked. Anyway, Sir Roger Palmer Bart, this is an indication of what it might be like to live under the landlord in Rush. Sir Roger Palmer had eviction notices served on those who attempted to remove gravel on the Rush shoreline. Now, I see Rusk. I used to get Rusk when I was a baby, so maybe I was thinking of that, but that's a spelling mistake. Rush. So local farmers wanted to get gravel and sand. The landlord didn't want them to get it, so on occasion they would go there and take some anyway, and then they got in trouble. They would get, and there's a couple of men named there, these fellas here. John Rooney, Patrick Dillon, Thomas Birmingham. They were summoned for taking the sand and gravel, etc. Now, Roger Palmer dies. And what happened was, it's on the slide there, what happened was he went away for the winter as usual, him and his wife, Lady Millicent. They went to Fenwick Park in Wales, and that was fine. He was hale and hearty going over there. They had a birthday party. Now it says in this slide here he's 78, but in another slide it says 79, so it's I don't know which it is, but in any case he died, and he died on Monday the 30th of May 1910. His home there in Wales was near Wrexham, and it says here he represented County Mayo in Parliament for 8 years and was one of the small surviving band of officers who took part in the famous charge of the 600 at Balaclava. Now, Balaclava, the most famous part of the Battle of Balaclava is, or the campaign, is the charge of the Light Brigade, and he was in that and survived it. But a source that I saw tentatively, I'm putting it forward, he lost a leg, not an entire leg, he lost the lower portion of his leg. But in any case, the horse that he was riding on got killed, and he subsequently had the hooves of the horse encased in gold and had them as mementos in Kenure. So that's an interesting little bit, if you like. So he was, I'm trying to see what age he was. Does it say it there? Oh yes, I should have said that, sorry, yeah. Thanks for that. Okay, now, his will. Now, if he was alive today, would he be a billionaire, would he be a multi-millionaire? He certainly was a multi-millionaire, because 115,000 acres of land in Mayo, 360 acres in Kenure, his house and an estate in Wales, and he also owned it. He had another estate in Maidenhead on the Thames, where he had another house, and he had a fleet, or do you call it a fleet of steam-powered ships. So whatever he was doing with those, they were going up and down the River Thames. So he was worth an awful lot of money. His estate was valued, this is the will here, so his estate was valued at 750,000 and a few pennies and shillings. He gave a goodly portion of that to his wife, and he also had some of it given or put in trust for his niece Mary Fenwick, so that her eldest son, who comes into the story shortly, her eldest son would have Kenure, Maidenhead and Fenwick Park in Wales. Apparently all the land in Mayo was to be disposed of, sold to the tenants if they were able to avail of it under the Windham Land Act 1903, I suppose. But in any case, now in Rush, the widow of Roger Palmer, Lady Gertrude Millicent Palmer, she's well known in Rush, or well remembered as having given sites for schools in the town. My wife went to the girls' school, and the boys' school was on the Channel Road. The girls' school was on the main street there. And there was also land given for the priest's house. St. Maur's Church is a very ancient church, and it was built on common land, of which there was a fair bit around Rush, the sandy areas down at the sand dunes. But the site for the priest's house, and my wife only told me recently there was two priest's houses. I only knew the one that was right beside the church. Apparently there was another one down further. But anyway, I never saw the second one, so maybe I'm getting it wrong. Now, Lady Palmer continued to live at Kenure for some years as a widow. In 1911, the census showed her living there with her two servants, Peter and Sarah Johnson. He was the caretaker. In October 1920, she donated £10 to the Sackable Brigand Disaster Fund. And by 1928, she was living at Fenwick Park in Wrexham in Wales, where she subsequently passed away in 1929. Now this brings then Roderick Fenwick Palmer onto the scene, because he was to inherit it. What he was to get was in a trust. So now the trust became valid, if you like. Now, this picture of Roderick Fenwick Palmer. He added the name Palmer to his name. This picture comes from a very good book, which some of you may have seen, Rush by the Sea. It was produced by the Rush ICA History Group. It's a great book. It's be well worthy of. If 1996 was published, and it would be well worthy of having a reprint of some sort, because it delves into all of the history of Rush. Segments. There was a segment about Kenure, but lots of other things as well, and it's on lovely paper. And 1996. So that photograph has come from there. He's in a group of people. So anyway, following Lady Palmer's demise in 1929, her late husband's niece, Mary Fenwick, saw her eldest son, Roderick, inherit the Palmer estates in Fenwick Park in Wales, Maidenhead on the River Thames, and Kenure Park in Rush. Now, we have a little bit of information about him. He was in the war, First World War, as an officer, as you would imagine. So, the Belfast News Letter in January 1915 had a reporter in Birmingham who spoke to Roderick, and this is what he had to say. Mr. R. Fenwick Palmer, who was about 26 years old and had just ridden his horse, Garinish Island, which apparently is a place in Ireland, over in the west coast. Anyway, to victory in the mostly selling hurdle handicap race, and it was asked why he was not at the war front in Europe, where he was a lieutenant in the 1st Life Guards Regiment. He said, "I want to get back. I was never in the thick of it. They are there they are, and I am at Windsor. Yes, we had some charges." There's a spelling wrong there. Charges. The lifeguards were good, and these charges were fine. The charge of the Prussian guards against us, they say I was wonderful. I was not in that. I had a wound. He was home on leave, had a wound. He apparently got a facial wound, shrapnel. I had a wound and have been in England in the cavalry since October. So he wasn't skiving off. He was at home having a wound, recovering from a wound, and he was in the cavalry. And so now some of these images here, oh sorry, I don't think I've moved. Oh no, that's okay, yeah. Now, what we have here is Kenure, under Roderick Fenwick Palmer's leadership in the ownership of the house, he was unmarried, so there was never a woman's influence in his life. Apart from his housekeeper, there was a housekeeper there called Kate Pratt. She was there for 42 years now. I'm sure she was his housekeeper as well, and he sought advice from her on local matters and what have you, and she was the one that brought him the daily news. He brought him the newspapers and also brought him news of the day from the local area if she had it, and so she was an important influence in his life, I would imagine. So what we have here then is we have that was a postcard, the one up there, that's a postcard, and that was a talk, after a talk I gave somewhere, because I gave this talk in various places. A person sent me that postcard, and it's an original postcard, 1963, and it shows the gardens. And then we have these other gardens here. T.J. Malloy, he's took a lot of photographs for that Rush by the Sea book. And then lower down here we have school children used to be brought in to have parties, and then we have what would you call them, local sports days, all taking place within the gardens of Kenure. It just says there, it was an old custom by Lady Millicent Palmer, so she started that, and he just carried it on. Now, we're moving along now to the sale of 1964, due to dry rot and other problems with the house. Roger Fenwick Palmer wanted to sell up. So basically what we're looking at there is auctions. So there's James H. North and Company, they were put in charge of the auction. So the Kenure Park, the mansion and 260 acres were put up for sale on the 23rd of June, I think it was, 1964. The contents of the house that was put up, they were going to have a separate auction in Kenure House itself, and that was going to happen in September of 1964. So by the end of 1964, Roger Fenwick Palmer no longer had an interest in the place. He was he didn't leave Rush. He went to live in the vicarage for a time, and but the Kenure and its house and the problems he was having were somebody else's problem. The Land Commission bought the whole thing, and then they parcelled out land to local growers, some of which only had 2 or 3 acres apparently. So they were delighted to get a little bit extra land. The cricket club got 3.5 acres, so they did okay. The house itself, Kenure House, was still standing at this stage. It only had 3.5 acres to be allocated with it, and they were trying to find buyers. You know, Paddy Murphy, if any of you get the Fingal Studies number 5, which was only launched this week, there's an article in there about Paddy Murphy, and there's information about his involvement in trying to sell Kenure House. There was no problem with the land. The local growers were only too willing to take whatever land they were given, so there was no problem getting rid of the land, but the house was a bit of a problem because only one person wanted it, and I'll be coming to that shortly. Now, you can see there, this slide shows you, just headlines tells tell quickly what I can't tell in a longer period. The Land Commission buys the estate, the shared out after the Rush, the land deal, the shared out among the local growers, etc. The division of the Rush estate. Now there was talk about building a satellite town out there. That didn't come to fruition, but looking at all the houses that's out there now, it probably is a satellite town in its own way. There's a lot of houses out there now. Now another event that used to be held annually in the gardens of Kenure was fundraising tea parties, one of which they had a fortune teller there, so you could go along and have tea and get your their fortune told. But the money was to be raised for the Jubilee Nurses Pension Fund, and then in other years he'd raise the money again for nurses, but maybe some other aspect of their wherewithal. Now, this is Fenwick Palmer in the middle here, and the quality of these images is not great because it came from newspaper. Well, what it has though, it has names. Now in this book here, Rush by the Sea, they have a higher quality image of some of these people, but there's no names. Fenwick Palmer is the only name. So either people had forgotten about the names, or they didn't know the names or whatever, but we have names now from this one and another one, I think, which gives names. And you can see them there. So Fenwick Palmer's in the middle. The other people, the other men are all charge hands. So we have Messrs. John Pratt, who was a steward, John Knight, a gardener, James Surk, stud groom, and Patrick Morgan, he was a farrier. And then at the back there you have William Farrell, worked on the farm, was a charge hand on the farm, Christopher McGee, another gardener, and Thomas Fagan, who looked after the herd of cattle. Now, in case I don't get to tell it along here before, the Woods Estate in Skerries, he also had gardeners, and when they were apprentices, he sent some of them for a period of time to Kenure, because he saw Kenure gardeners as being up there, and so his aspiring gardeners could go and pick up some of the stuff and then come back to the Woods Estate. So we have a few more. Now in this one we have, and this one here, the women here are not named, unfortunately, and unless somebody can pick them out. Fenwick Palmer is in with them, but I don't know. If there's anybody here from Rush, they might recognise some of those and tell me at the end if you like. But anyway, the one at the bottom there is it says the retired men from Kenure Park, because Kenure Park, this is, by the way, this is Colonel Fenwick Palmer and staff. It should say former staff really, because this was in November 1964, so everything, the Kenure House was already sold. But anyway, the guys are retired, and they held a farewell Kenure get-together function in the Rockabill Hotel, Skerries. And the Evening Herald is responsible for showing us these photographs. Now the retired men were, from left, William Pratt, he was a butler. James Kelly, a herd. Thomas Devine looked after the farm stock, and all of whom had some 40 years service prior to retirement. Now, but that was back in the days when you could have a job that you worked in your entire life. Now, this is another man here. This is another Pratt, John Pratt. Now, it says caretaker. Now, he's not caretaker for Kenure or Fenwick Palmer or anything anymore, because that's gone. The county council owns it now, and he's presumably he's doing caretaking for him. Oh, sorry, for that body. And you can see there the heading. He's saying the mansion is going to rack and ruin. The forgotten house, the home of the Palmer family, up to 3 years ago. So it's in possession of the council, and Paddy Murphy is trying his best to sell it, find a buyer for it. And there was a person who wanted to buy it, and I hope that it's on the slide here. I haven't forgotten it. Anyway, I'm okay yet. Now these are a few pictures of the inside of the house. You can look at these up on askaboutirland.ie. I've just basically shown you two here. The main entrance hall and staircase before and after the making of motion pictures in 1965. The Face of Fu Manchu, starring Christopher Lee. 10 Little Indians, starring Hugh O'Brien. Rocket to the Moon with Burl Ives and Terry Thomas. I love Terry Thomas. I used to see him. He was the master of a girls' school, wasn't he? In other television programs, or maybe there were films. I'm not sure, but I liked them. And then The film companies received, or the county council, Dublin County Council received £5,000 from the film companies for the use of the house. But unfortunately, you can see there, that's all of that destruction is not down to the film companies, but I've been told that this big hole up here was to let a boom, a sound boom or a camera or something to stick out. See, the house was falling apart. It's definitely fallen. This is probably more late 1978 than at the time when the films were being made. But I was told that hole was made by the film company. But anyway, moving on. Now, Roderick Fenwick Palmer had lived in the vicarage, and then he resorted then to his home in Fenwick Park in Wales. He was tuned into the social scene over there. He had property in London, as I said, so he probably spent time in London, and he even more at the centre of the universe in London regarding the social scene. And he was into horse racing, and he reared his own horses and stuff. So he died then, and he left £477,000. So there's information there on that particular slide there. It says he died last month at the age of 76, and he left bequests. He left money to some of the Palmers. Now, if you want to know more about the Palmers and their Mayo estates, this Four Courts Press book is one of the minute local study series. I'm fortunate to have one of these myself. Mine was about the 1916 Rising, but this man has written about the Palmer estates in Mayo, and he has in it the only picture that I know of the Roger Palmer that we spoke to about earlier. I couldn't show it, and I wouldn't show it because it's copyright in there in this book, and I'll hand it around there. Anybody who wants to see it can see it. And also there's a picture on the other page of the Welsh estate, Fenwick Park. Now, the author of that book predeceased the publication, David Bourne. Anybody else who had one of those minute pamphlets, such as myself, you sort of bask in the glory of it. It's hard to get into that series of books. You bask in the glory of it for a while. And that poor man died. He got cancer and he died before. He knew it was going to be published all right, but he didn't get to see it finished, which is sad. But that's the way life is, I suppose. Now, what have we got to show you here? Now, the death of Lieutenant Colonel Fenwick Palmer occurred on 17th of October 1968 at his home, Fenwick Park, Wrexham, Wales. He'd been ill for a time and was 76 years old. The Drogheda Independent gave an obituary. The passing of Colonel Roderick Palmer of the Vicarage Rush and late owner of Kenure House has cast a shadow of gloom over Rush, where he was a very respected figure. So that goes on, but we'll now on this side over here, he was an author, and he wrote under an assumed name, George Roderick, and he wrote several books, all about horse racing, apparently. Now, I looked up the National Library and I looked up the Royal Irish Academy to see did any of his books here in Ireland, not from the north. I don't know about the north, but in the southern Ireland, and there wasn't any. So I bought one from the UK. So I bought this one here, Gimcrack. Now, apparently the dust covers don't survive. I don't know why, but anyway, I have the book. I meant to bring it, but it's at home. But it's a hard-covered book. But the dust cover showing the horses, and he's writing about horses. It's not a book all about himself or anything. He doesn't hardly mention himself, but it's about horses. So one of the newspapers then in December 1972, the Irish Times, Lionel Fleming, he writes under the heading of No Hope for Kenure, so you can know where that's coming from. And then the one here then is £1 a year for the rent of a mansion and Paddy Murphy is the man that would have put those words together. So basically they were looking for somebody who could buy the house, but would have to pay for all the repairs that were necessary, and the bill for that was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The pressure for housing, because St. Catherine's housing estate was what everybody's looking for, and it was coming too close to the house, and the potential buyer, this woman here. Wait now, I must have sent some of my slides here are not matching up with here, but anyway, we'll get around that. This woman here, she's an American with an Irish mother, grew up in America, and she married an O'Brien, and maybe they come back here because of that, I don't know, but she set her heart on having, buying Kenure House, because she had an English language institute in Dublin, and they were doing a lot of stuff. They were bringing people in from abroad to study the English language, and she tried if you my first article, which got published in the Dublin Historical Record in 2006, and they're all online. Anybody wants, I can give you how to get it. Anyway, I can go into chapter and verse of how she tried to buy the place. There's a letter there, and she's writing to the Honourable Desmond Guinness, and she wrote to the Archbishop of Rush. She wrote to all sorts of people. What's her name? Brendan Scally of the Heritage Group. He was also involved, and they were all trying to help her to buy the bloody place. And she even said that during the winter, when she wouldn't have students, the people of Rush could use the facilities. You know, they could play cards. They could, the rooms are vast, huge rooms in the place. But anyway, it didn't work out. So we keep moving along, and this is what these are now where we're coming into, and I'm beginning to run out of time. I'm going to go quickly through these. This is showing a protest. So it's a protest put on by the Rush Community Council, and they said enough is enough. They went out, the house is gone. Look at the pile of rubble that's in amongst the portico. So there's St. Catherine's Estate here, and it's showing how close the houses were coming to this. Mrs. Concannon O'Brien had a problem with the houses being coming so close to the big house, because she said, I can't get an investor to come in if any houses are too close to it. They need a bit of ground, a bit of land around it with a few trees to make the place look good. Anyway, moving quickly along. Here's more protesters. Now, one of them, I think it's either that man or that man, is Dermot. Yeah, somebody has it there. We'll get the page up. I can't read it off the screen, sorry. Members of the Rush Community Council today picketed the site at Kenure, where workmen are preparing to dismantle a fine carved portico. And the portico is all that remains of the 200-year-old Kenure House, which was demolished last week. So that was in September 1978. Now, because I've only got a few minutes left, I'm just going to keep going here really quick. This photograph here is one of the photographs that was saved by local people going up there and taking a few photographs. Now, Father Kit Sheridan and a group like-minded people in 1964 went into Kenure and took loads of photographs in the inside of the house. And they're now, they had them in Rush for a good while, and they're now in the Irish Architectural Archives. So you can go in there and ask to see the Father Kit Sheridan photographs, and they'll show you all the stuff. But this wasn't taken. He may have took this, but this was taken by Fred and Elizabeth Balcom of Skerries. They were friends of mine. Fred's since passed on. You might remember he died in a helicopter accident a few years ago. But Betty she's involved in the photographic group. She's at the Skerries Historical Society, etc. Now this is a major an amount of a cow house, you like. Now we saw earlier that Fenwick Palmer was employing herds. Who they managed? They managed the cow, and he won an award for his, he won the Lady Talbot de Malahide Cup for the cow showing the best cash return for the year 1936-37. Now there's more there, but that gives you an idea. The cash return from a cow won a cup. Who knew? Now there's this drawing here was drawn by Brendan Scally of Antashka, and he was trying to help. Well, he was trying to help Mrs. Concannon O'Brien, but once the house was knocked, there was no point. She drifted off the scene. But Brendan then, among others, they wanted to do something with the portico. They wanted to have a garden around it, and it does look nice. And if you I was able to find that the funding for such a garden was made available. It was becoming available, and then there was a council meeting, and the funding was thought that it was needed somewhere else more than a garden around the portico at Kenure. So the money disappeared off some other direction. Anybody in local politics will know how that works. That's not me. I'm not in that world, but I can understand if somebody else made a better case for the money, it's gone. Right. Now, one thing I should have said really there about that. Now, in the builder, that's I showed earlier about the old house. The house was repaired and all the rooms, the sketch and all the rest of it. Well, in that it says that all these pillars and the bases and all the rest were all granite, and that they came from a quarry 20 miles from Dublin and 17 miles from Kenure, and praise was heaped on the men, the skilled men who made all these things out of granite. Now the only problem with that, and then Brendan Scally in a much later time, because 1855 is when the builder was published, but at this period here, 1976, Brendan Scally, he says that portico came from somewhere else and was put onto Kenure, but the builder says it came from this quarry. The only problem is the quarry has to be, where are we here now? The quarry has to be out there somewhere, and there's no granite that I know of in County Dublin, in Fingal. You have to go to Dalkey for granite. So I looked up this man's book here, Matthew Park's book. I haven't got it there. Matthew Park's. He covers all of the quarries of North County Dublin, and there's none of them producing granite. So we have a problem there. We don't know which situation was actually the one. Now to finish up, Catherine will be getting worried now. To finish up, this was in the Irish Times only this week. I for a minute when I looked at it, I thought I was looking at a picture of the Kenure. Of course, then I noticed that this big glass house, Kenure never had a big glass house. But look, it looks for all intents and purposes like Kenure. Yeah, and it certainly was built. I don't know if I was able to find the exact date when it was built, but it's like Kenure. Now, I put these up here because it tells you better than any words I can say of what Kenure could have been. It could have been a success story that this is. It's a Ballyfin house. I never heard of it before, so I didn't have time to look up any of the coffee table books to see what it says. But Ballyfin House in Laois, and it's a place where you want to have deep pockets to go and stay. It's a hotel, and you can have a wonderful time there. And so, if Mrs. Concannon O'Brien had got her for our English Institute, we could still have a place out there where students were coming in from around the world to learn English, or if it had survived long enough, it could have been developed, well, preserved more like, because they didn't have to rebuild it, they just kept it as it was. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.